This is a case showing excision of a traumatic orbital AV fistula. Here you can see after an eyelid crease incision made by the ocular surgeon, we can see the area of the swollen varix on the lateral aspect to the right. And here we start to identify the actual fistula itself, fed from supraorbital and perhaps anterior ethmoidal artery supply. And we can see it coming from the supraorbital along the orbital roof, and then more posteriorly from an anterior ethmoidal supply. Obviously, the fistula itself is the main target here, and here we can see that fistula with its venous drainage more laterally. Indocyanine green angiography is performed, and we can see the larger varix to the right coming in late, but still engorged, and of course the fistula comes in very early. Our initial approach is directly at the fistula itself. And here we can see dissecting around the fistula. You can see again the varix laterally. The periosteum up toward the supraorbital supply coming through the orbital roof is carefully opened. This will give us access to one of the main arterial supplies of this fistula. You can see again this is all performed in concert with ocular surgery with excellent and direct access to this fistula. Opening the periosteum further directly to the ostia of the supraorbital connection, we can then coagulate and sacrifice the supraorbital supply. After this has been done, we'll perform another indocyanine green angiography, which shows the fistula itself is dead, but as you can see laterally, there's still mild filling of the varix, which itself must be getting some supply through the periosteum. Therefore, the varix itself is resected now that it's been largely disconnected or completely disconnected from the actual fistulous connection. Now, this may itself with time diminish, but given that it still clearly has some minor supply to it, we wanted to perform an entire resection of this varix to ensure that it did not become symptomatic again. This was the primary point of symptomatology. You can see there's still some minor feed into it. This appears to be coming through a periosteal supply or perhaps through a lacrimal gland and lacrimal artery. Once that is indeed closed off, even though it's not part of the major fistula, we can see that the varix becomes much more pliable and much more venous in character. Minor bleeding from the major port of the fistula itself is encountered, likely still getting supply from either residual supraorbital or anterior ethmoidal. Once that's controlled, we turn our attention back to the varix and finish resecting that, ensuring that any connection between it and minor supraorbital branches are removed. Here, leaving the periosteum intact, resect the remainder of the varix. You can see where its attachment to the fistula was previously. And now we turn our attention back to the fistula, completely amputating any connection with the supraorbital. Here, the supraorbital artery and fistula, which is very engorged, is coagulated and then cut. And then completely removed. By resecting this, we ensure that any connections surrounding it are completely dealt with. See any minor residual with feed from the anterior ethmoidal is then dissected posteriorly. There's still some mild engorgement of this end of the fistula, this medial aspect of the fistula. And once this is coagulated, the fistula is essentially completely treated. Inspecting the whole area, we see no evidence of varix and a complete removal.